consultancy that aims to connect and galvanize schools and youth worldwide in efforts to accelerate towards a net zero economy by 2050. I would like to welcome Sir again, and please welcome both the speakers with a good round of applause. I would now hand over the dais to Professor Foley to initiate the conversation with Mr. McDonald. Thank you.
Is this on? Yes. Well, thank you first of all for inviting me. It's my. You can't hear me. On? Closer, maybe. Oh, sorry. Yes. First of all, thank you very much for having me, having us. It's my first time in India, but my father used to come all the time and told me what a beautiful country. So I'm really touched to be here. So, of course I met Richard, today, and we were talking about our communal interest. I'll start by saying that as a linguist, when I was first invited to participate in this Samvad, I realized this was a new word for me. So I was really interested in finding out about the etymology of the word and the idea of having learned a new word as I was coming here to prepare for this. And I'm really grateful to have the chance to talk to Richard, who I think has a much longer history of being involved. So I'm a linguist. Mostly I work on verbs. But once upon a time, a few years ago, I was provost of 2 campuses of our university. And as I was sort of engaged with the notion that universities shouldn't be ivory towers where we just study things, sometimes things that might appear a little bit detached from reality, like verbs and various complex things relating to human language, I started sort of think about things that I could do. And as I was telling Richard, my initial experience of thinking about sustainability education came from going to a lot of meetings with business, civic leaders, politicians, that gave me the sense of making decisions, and this came up today in one of the sessions, but not really being aware of their short-term decisions meant for the world, because what they were worrying about were mostly quick wins, things that they needed to do right now, and we can think later about carbon footprint or things that are going to make the world already which is already in trouble, even worse. So that was the beginning of my journey, trying to see what I could do to bring education, actually, a little bit of education to those sector of the society that I was interacting with, using a tool that was the most obvious to me, which was our architecture students. So in my university, architecture is taught sort of vertically with all students from first year to 5th year, studying together and teaching one another, with sustainability and being at the heart of how you teach architecture, how you think of a building. So that was the beginning of my journey, but I'm here, and I would love to tell you more about basically how I created a program. I got the city to give me some money to create a program where the architecture students, that I called the architects of change, because they were not only architects, but also they were changing behavior and understanding in business and civic leader, essentially created a program of quick development over 3 days, and taught business leader across the city about the ABC of sustainable development. But I don't want to sort of take too much time of this. And what I was saying is that I wanted to sort of begin by actually asking Richard, as I was telling him about this, he started telling me about what he has been engaged in over the course of many years. And as he was telling me about this sort of his work, around sort of planning and thinking about schools of the futures, I thought, well, one of the things we do now when I go into schools with people in my project, we do a sort of a form of dreaming exercise where we get our young people to sort of imagine a problem. I'd like to ask Richard to actually do a similar type of exercise with us and tell us a little bit about what a school of the future looks like, and maybe if we were willing to participate in that, to really do it as a form of dreaming exercise where we close our eyes and I let the real knowledgeable person here, because, as I was reading about Samvad, it says, it's a conversation between the knowledgeable and the non-knowledgeable. I was thinking, who is definitely the more knowledgeable here between the two of us. So, I'll pass on the microphone to him to say, wonder whether, Richard, you could tell us. So I could see these, lacking things in people around me, and you have so much knowledge and so much sort of thinking that you have done. Could you walk us through a school of the future?
Thank you very much for that. I love talking about schools of the future because they're not here yet, or perhaps they are. So I can say just about anything and nobody can prove me wrong. But I am a troublemaker. I was a very studious and straightforward student at school, and I did all the things that were expected of me, and I got good grades and I worked hard and I did lots of other things. But over the course of my career as an educator, I've realized how important it is to be badly behaved, how to be disruptive, how to challenge, not destructively, but to think about how we dismantle and remodel things. Whether we're an engineer, whether we're an artist, whether we're a designer, take it apart and put it back together again. Which makes it sound simple. Schools are quite difficult to dismantle and put back together. I'm also a great believer in the importance of role models and the importance of people recognizing that young people say to their teachers, those are my okay teachers, those are the bad teachers, these are the good teachers, but these are the people who transform me. The role models. How do we get more of those kind of teachers and maybe get rid of the word teacher because it just sounds so transactional. And I believe one of the keys to that is breaking down communicative seals. This session is a conversation between us two, in which two people talk and a lot of people listen. That is one of our fundamental challenges in schools, is that there are a small number of people who talk a lot, and there are a large number of people who listen, but probably not very much and not for very long. So I'm a great believer in moving rather than just listening, turning the listening brain into the interactive brain. And that's why I'm going to ask anybody who's in this room right now who is a student in a school, I want you to come and sit as close as you can to the front. Because right now, I can sort of feel you over here, but I can't see you and interact with you. So if you're right now studying in school or in university, come and please fill these empty seats at the front. Thank you. That was extremely rapid, efficient, and obedient, which are three things that often are missing in schools: rapidity, efficiency, and obedience. So well done. You are the most important people in this room, and the other people who are in this room, I think they'll agree with me. If anybody else thinks they're as important or more important than the students, please also come and sit at the front. We don't want you to miss out on the party. Never be afraid to sit next to the president. In fact, the people who make changes in the world very often have that courage. So one of the things I'm talking to you, particularly students, about, as I'm trying to break this sort of glass wall here, is that you need to be the active architects of your own learning. Don't wait to be asked to sit at the front. And I don't just mean physically, I mean in everything you undertake. How do I position myself to get the most out of this? Okay, you're now no longer lost over there, and you're all staring at me very hard, saying, even with your pen, I can see somebody with a pen going to write something down. So I have to say something worth writing down. I think, in a way, I've ducked your question slightly, but I hope I've begun to answer it. Is that we need some reversals in schools. We need to bring students to the center. We need to give them the confidence to come and sit next to the people who make decisions and have influence. And as the educators, because not all of you, but perhaps all of you in the rest of the room are educators directly or indirectly, you need to give your students this agency to do this. I hope we'll have a little time at the end of the session for questions. And I'm only going to take questions if you're still at school. Not because I don't care or respect for the rest of you, but your voice too often gets left till last. And your voice, you don't come here to tell stuff, you come here to ask stuff. And the questions are more important than the statements and the claims. I'm going to come back in a little bit to this idea of what the schools of the future can and might be, and perhaps what they must be. But I don't want to hog the stage. I'm now going to perhaps fire back at you. You touched on the idea that you've worked with people in positions of authority who they're too busy with their own priorities and things like that. How do we shift that? How do you take people for whom the sustainability debate, it's kind of there and you have to tolerate it, but it's not your core priority? How do we shift them from that to having them at the center, sustainability as a central priority in what they're doing?
It's a difficult question. I would say a couple of things. The first one is that there is this massive tension in people that are in position of authority between thinking about what are the quick wins and what are the sort of the long sort of project that we can put on the on the long arm. And very often politicians, for sure, they're in power for a few years, the quick wins are more important, and it's understandable in the sense that if you run a company, you're not thinking about probably, what's going to happen in 10 years. You also have to think about what's happening this year. So one thing that it's needed is to remind them that when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about the future looks like incredibly difficult to reach and is incredibly far. But I use often lately sort of an analogy, which is what seems impossible. Imagine if we were to, I didn't meet any of my grandparents because I was the last one of 4 children. So when I was born, my grandparents were not alive. But I'm pretty sure that if I've had a grandmother, a grandfather, and I had said to them, there is a world where you can run everything from this, or something, take a box and pretend it's a phone, and then, because at the time the phone looked like this, of course, and grandma, there will be a world where you can do absolutely everything from booking a doctor to catching a flight to heating your own home. They would have laughed, they would have said, oh, this is a child imagining something totally impossible. But of course, it all happened, and it happened in the span of, very little time. So I think we need to convince people in position of power that what they see as often probably utopia to them, or something that is not going to keep them in power or not going to keep their jobs, it's actually not a contradiction with respect to the quick wins that they have to put on their report or list as part of their achievements. And then the other thing is that we need to find a way practically to map it out and to see the tools that are available. So, as we mentioned earlier, I am part of this very large set of grants in the UK that are using design as a tool to sort of map out the relationship between what you need and the function that it has and how you get there, which is what design is meant to be doing. But I would say that the first is to reconcile that incredible contradiction that is intrinsic between what people want to do in order to feel that they have achieved something and what we all need as a society and as a world. But I'm going back to your School of the Future, because I do want, so can you give us three key components, given that we probably don't have time to map it all out. But can you give us three ideas, and then can you tell us how we make that happen? If it was all in your hands.
That's great. I think earlier today we had about 3 minutes to say three transformational things. Sometimes it's a good thing for you to remember, students, that sometimes less is more. So if I can solve the schools of the future with three things, but I'll have to be thinking fast while I'm talking, which is a good skill to develop if you can. I'm going to ask two questions of students. One question is fairly easy. One question is a bit more difficult. Can I have a volunteer to answer the easy question? Don't be afraid. Volunteerism is the core to making stuff happen. Great. You're happy for the easy question. It's quite a cunning strategy, this, because it means you don't get asked the difficult question. You can do, we'll let somebody else do the hard one. So here's my question for you, is where do you live?
Currently, I'm living in college hostel.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Thank you. That wasn't too difficult. No stress. Okay. Who wants a more difficult question? Are you at school?
Yes.
Very good. What? Take time to answer this, because it won't just trip off your tongue. And by the way, I'm asking everybody in the room the same question, but I'm only going to let her answer. Okay, but everybody ask yourself this question. My question is, what is your deep intent? What is your deep intention in your life? The thing that matters most, that will shape your whole life. Too soon. Take 5 seconds, take time, because sometimes the second idea is better than the first.
For me, like the deepest intent, not right now, but always has been to do good. To do good, not just to the environment or just to people, I don't know, but doing good, doing what I feel is right is something that I always try to pursue. That is what I would like to answer.
Thank you. Let's give her a round of applause. I hope there are lots of people who care as much about doing good, whatever it is. I mean, it's hard to know what is good. Sometimes life is confusing and we think we're doing something good, but it's not good. Life is full of ambiguities, but that's a beautiful answer. Thank you for having the courage to answer the difficult question. Imagine now I'm the teacher, and you've got a chance to critique me as a teacher. Which was the most developmental question? Hands up if you thought it was the first question. That will help to develop the person who answered it. And put your hand up if you think the second question might have been the most developmental question. Thank you. And put your hand up if you didn't put your hand up. This is where I see the courageous people in the room, because I know half of you didn't put your hand up. But seriously, put your hand up if you didn't answer my last question. That's courage, admitting you didn't answer the question. We have to allow people not to answer questions because they're not ready to yet. But in school, it's all about, here's the question, give me the answer. Generally, there's a right and a wrong answer. You could have lied to me. I might not have known where you were from. But there's a right and a wrong answer to where you live. There isn't a right or wrong answer. There may be answers that shock or worry. You know, if you're driven by the desire to be a dictator of the whole planet and crush everybody under your heel, that is a deep intent, and history shows that some people succeed. We might argue about whether it's a good intent, but really it's important, whether you're an adult or as a student and at a school, that we start breaking down this idea of the generation that studies at school and then the generation that studies at university, and then the generation that knows it all, and then there's the parents of the generation that know it all, who know it better. We've got to stop that stratification of knowledge, start breaking down this. And the way we do that is through intergenerational conversations of the kind I hope I can open up now. Intergenerational conversations. And also intercultural conversations. I feel very honoured to be a European, steeped in European and international experiences, coming to this wonderful country here. But I learn the most when I'm surrounded by people who are not like me. And most schools are surrounded by you're surrounded by people who are like you. So perhaps that's my second point to your question, originally 3, is we need to create intergenerational conversations. We need to create a sense of breaking down the barriers. And we need to create that sense of courage as learners to engage in the difficult questions and not the sort of, I know a lot of stuff that may be of no consequence.
Thank you very much. Do you want us to? Yeah. Wonderful. Yes. Well, it's very interesting that you say that, because I think the other thing that my experience that I have to contribute to this conversation is precisely how you kind of link together, what seems to be different sort of part of our society and different ages. And so one way in which we can do that, I think, is perhaps to choose, choose sort of small realities that include all of that. And, that's one of the projects that we have done, which has been really an instructive thing, because we have chosen a very small island where, you have few kids and you have few older people and lots of problems and tourism that could be done better and recycling that could be done better and resources that could be developed in the future. And we have used them to sort of understand them, but also create them as a case study that can teach us something about many different other kinds of realities. So that in a way brings me back to what you were asking, because I kept thinking, did I answer well enough your initial question? And I think perhaps, because what you were talking earlier, you were asking me, what do we need to give to this? We're hearing a lot about the fact that we need to educate children because they are our future and they have the imagination and the ability to think big, like I was saying earlier about the phone, and to imagine a different world. We need to bring our young people that have such wonderful aspirations, to really be the power of a different world. But we also need to bring sort of, people a little bit further on, like myself, or people of my generation and the next ones. And maybe knowing of cases where we can really see the difference happening by the way things are done, it's really a way to do it. So, it was really amazing to see this documentary, but it was also at a very high level. And I think one of the things that we need to think more is, what has happened and where something has happened that has changed, and how can we integrate that in the experience of leaders. So that's because you talked about the need for bringing in different generations. So my question to you is, but how would you do that? And my idea is that perhaps using small case studies and that give reality to ideas is one way to do it. But I bet you've thought about this much harder than I have.
Somebody's cut my mic off for that reason. I'm conscious we need to wrap up, but I haven't given any homework. And I'm looking at the students here, but actually at the adults too. Because the single most important thing I threw out to you was a question. and it was, what is your deep intent? Because that will shape and motivate everything you do, regardless of what you learn in school and you learn in life. It will shape and drive you, and it will be a permanent driver, even if you're alone. And so your homework, whether you're an adult or a student, is to grab a moment, either straight after this session or during the course of the next 2 days, and come and talk to me. Have the courage to come and say, I'm thinking about my deep intent, and I think it might be this. And the very fact of saying it to somebody who hears it will give you rocket fuel. And schools of the future must provide rocket fuel to learners. The job is not to instruct, it's to inspire, to engage, and to interact. So schools of the future, let's break down these seals, let's break down the generational things, let's inspire and get people to engage with their deep intent.
Sir, for such a engaging and an enlightening session. And I would actually just add, I'm an educator myself, so for you to provide the center stage to the youth, who we always keep saying they are the, they have to take up the responsibility for sustainability in the future. It's a huge thing for them. I'm sure they will get really, motivated by it. Thank you so much. And for this session, now I would like to call upon Dr. Bush to kindly felicitate both our speakers. And can we please have the mementos for the same? Thank you once again. I would like to actually apologize that we couldn't take any questions from the audience in this session. We are running a little short on time, but we have a tea after this where I'm sure sir and ma'am will be really encouraging you to come and speak to them and ask your queries to them. Thank you.